Okay, so the first thing that you mentioned is this here. And I think it would actually be better if you had an object. So as I look at this, I see a shape and maybe even a second shape or a gradient mesh map. And then that kind of tapers off this way and it kind of fades into this color. And so if you were to take this object, which what's going on with that? Oh, it's a clipping mask. Okay, so let's just grab this circle and let's go copy, paste it back, and let's take it out of that, put it underneath that, and let's make it bright pink so we can see what's going on. Okay, so we've got some blending going on. Okay, so let's go back to our clipping group here. And let's get rid of that gradient, which is probably right there. Yep, okay. So let's just make this just a solid color. All right. We could make this a gradient. I'm going to get rid of this for a second. I just want to look at this gradient really fast. What do we have? Okay. So if we drop this out, I think that'll be okay. All right. So now, if we want to go inside of this, we can just double click. Now we're in isolation mode. And I'm seeing a shape that kind of does this. So I'm going to start with this, like that. And then I'm going to add, let's adjust this gradient here.
You don't have to draw inside for this one.
Now, once you have a clipping mask, you can just double click to get into the isolation mode of that clipping mask. The draw inside, where you do Shift D and everything, that's really just to like start the clipping mask.
Okay.
I'm gonna take opacity up to 100, and let's just grab a color there. Let's go HSB. Just crank that. And do you have colors for these already?
I might have some swatches.
Okay. All right, so let's do this. We'll just grab. Okay. Yep. 1 sec. We'll do it this way. Changes all the time. Okay. So it's a little bit harder here, and then there's another one right there that's kind of bent and wrapped a little bit. And so we could do one of two things. But one of the things that we could do is if we come up like this, bend this way, we can probably make a gradient mesh map that'll do what we want it to do. So we'll kind of go like that, and then I'm going to hit U for gradient mesh map, which is that one. And I want to get it right along there, so I'm going to hit it just right there. That's pretty close. I'm going to drop this down. Bring this up. Bring this up. All right. So now, let's, I want to look at this. I see this bend. Also, it gets darker. There's a mid-tone value. And there's kind of a lighter mid-tone value. And so I'm going to say that I want another, well, I can just change those there, so that's fine. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it along this edge pretty far. Adjust that line, kind of like that, and then we'll cut this off. It's pretty good. We can extend this down a bit more. Okay. So now if we take this anchor point and this anchor point and this anchor point, and we make this color. And we take this one, this one, this one, and we make it a lighter color. We can actually probably just grab color there. And then I'm seeing kind of this row right here. And so that kind of bends. I'm going to take that. I'm going to take that up. I'm going to take this over. Take this over. I want to kind of get this bend that we're seeing. And because we're using the mask, it doesn't matter that the shape on the outside is weird. And so I can take this, go to HSB, and I can just kind of dial that down until I like it. At this point, you're just kind of adding spots where you want to kind of change things up. So now we can grab this guy and go to transparency, multiply, opacity. We'll drop the opacity of everything just a touch. Okay. And then I see it kind of fade off here. And so I'm going to grab everything here and I'm going to hit this color. Yeah.
So the gradient mesh map, you're really just manipulating the gradient through shapes and lines. Is that all it is?
Yeah. So the gradient mesh map, it works just like a linear gradient, except it works in 8 directions rather than. And so it's going from this color to this color. So if I were to make, so I just turned these ones to this color and then turn the opacity down.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But if I take this one and I make it like a bright green or something, let's do like a blue. See what it's doing is it's following each of these lines to the next anchor point, and that anchor point in a gradient mesh map is the same as a color stop on a gradient.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's going from blue to brown, 100% opacity to 0% opacity. But then it also does it to this anchor point, and this one, and this one, and this one. So it does it on the lines, and then it does it diagonally in between the lines. Does that make sense?
Yes. Did you create those extra lines, or did mesh map just come with those?
Yeah, so the gradient mesh just kind of comes with all of those things.
So it can be all those different directions.
Right. So let's play with it just a little bit more so we can kind of get an understanding of it. And so if I create a shape like this, and then I always start with a rectangle, just because it makes it better. Once I hit the gradient mesh tool, U, if I add a line, what it's going to do is it's going to try to figure out the average between the horizontal and the vertical lines. And so to make that easier to understand, let's bend this one. And we'll bend this one up. And so if I hit that in the middle here, what it's doing is it's taking this line and this line, and it's giving me whatever percentage across that is, probably 15 to 20% of the tween between those two lines. And then this one, because it's a little bit higher, it's going to match that. But if I were to come down here on that same axis, okay, it's going to start curving this way. And so you'll see, and then when you can come in and you can add different colors along here and on the anchor points themselves. And what it does is it tries to tween between the anchor points along those paths. And so if I want this to be really extreme, I can move this super close, and that transition happens faster. Right. It's just like a color stop on the gradient. And so I can pull these away, and then I can change this to something. Oh, come back. Let's change it to like a yellow, and you'll see that it's going yellow to brown, yellow to brown, yellow to brown, but then it goes yellow to blue along that line. And so if I were to change this one to, I don't know, pink or something, then this goes pink to brown, pink to yellow, pink to brown, right? And so it just kind of does that. And then you can just come in and you can manipulate these points with these handlebars. And since there's two lines, you have two sets of handlebars that can operate just like a normal anchor point. They can be seesaw across that anchor point, or if you use your anchor point tool, you can break them and they can have corners. And so you can kind of come in here and get some kind of weird effects going on where it gets kind of noisy in the middle. But what we're doing is we identified, I'm going to move this just a little closer. We identified right here that there is, in your reference photo, there's this bending, this kind of swooping deal going on. And so try to mimic that swooping. And then I just want it to just blend into the rest of this shape. And so even though this shape only goes to this edge, these are the same color, and I brought the opacity to 0. And so from these 3 or 4 points to these 3 or 4 points, it's going from 100% opacity to 0% opacity, so it fades into whatever's under. And then you have this hard edge over here, and if you want to, you can fade that as well. And so we can come in and we can grab this, and we can grab these guys, and we can grab here and here. And if we take the opacity down, you'll see a fade as well. So you kind of see that fade going on. I'm going to pull that out a little bit because it looks like we're overlapping. There's something weird going on. What is that? Yes, that is that one. This to drop. That to drop. What is causing this one? Pull that back. There we go. And now I'm going to grab this, this, and this, and we bring the opacity down. It'll fade. And so it softens that edge a little bit. And you can kind of pull these out to kind of fade that a little more or less or whatever. I just want this line, let's see, I want this line to follow. So it's darker here. So that's kind of that, but you get that kind of swooping effect, and you can continue to kind of come in and adjust, how that swoops, however you want.
And is that all a shape now?
So what do you mean?
Is it just one thing, or is that all one path?
Yeah, so it's a shape that has a mesh map on it.
Oh, right, because it's a.
Yeah, because we started with a rectangle. So that's that. And then we also, on top of that shape, if you look at the attributes, Come on. We've got 75% opacity, and you could also probably, add a multiply. Screen will disappear because we're going for darker. Overlay will mix it lighter. And so we can go multiply, darken, color burn. And so I'm either going to go with darken or multiply. I like multiply for this one. Hit escape to get out of isolation mode. So that gives you that. And that might help you with these because you've got kind of a linear gradient.
And they look really harsh.
Yeah, and they're pretty harsh. And if you look closely, there's a hard-ish edge, but it's still a little fuzzy. And this is actually a pretty solid transition. And so, you could come in here and you could probably fix that a little bit by let's see if we can grab one of those shapes. So is this the, okay, so left shine. Okay, so if we take this and we just go Effect, Blur, Gaussian Blur, we can kind of look at that, hit Preview, dial this down. It'll soften that edge for you. Sometimes that's a significantly faster way. So we'll go bottom shine, and since we already kind of dialed in what we want, we can just go apply Gaussian blur. It'll do the same thing. Right shine. But you have other blurs like radial blurs, which will give you kind of a spin or a zoom. And for like brush metal and stuff like that, that can be helpful. Yeah, but there's a lot of different options there. But Gaussian blur is kind of your basic, blur in all directions situation. Okay. And so that kind of helps. That looks way better. Yeah, that kind of helps soften that a little bit. I'm still seeing some highlights, so.
Would you do a gradient for that or make it?
No, I would just come in, I'd do a circle. Something like that. And then I would make it white, get rid of your stroke. And then go Gaussian blur. And then if I don't like how blurred that is, I want to actually blur it more, I can go into my appearance panel and double click. And it'll pull this up. I'm going to blow this way out. Like that. Then I'm going to mix it. So I'll come in and I'll go transparency because we're doing lighter now. I'm going to start with screen or overlay. And I'll mix it down just a touch. Okay, and then I can get rid of that and hit escape. And it'll kind of show me. See, it's just a touch lighter.
It looks weird.
Yeah, and I mean, you could take this shape and copy paste in front and make it a little bit smaller and maybe rotate it. And it'll give you kind of a little bit of a highlight point there. Mm-hmm. So that kind of gives you that little spot there, and there's like another one right here. And so you could come in and grab one of these, hold Alt, pull it up, and I'm gonna bring the opacity up just a little. Okay, so you can kind of keep working with that, and that'll do that. Some other things that I'm seeing is I think you could use some more concentric circles here.
Yeah, I used to have it.
Okay, so copy paste in front. We're just going to come down, and I see that about hits the numbers. And I'm going to do something weird here. So I'm going to change this to a black, and then get rid of my stroke. And I'm going to go Effect, Apply Gaussian Blur, make this slightly larger. Okay, and then I'm going to crank this way down, way down. And multiply it. Okay, and then I'm going to put one in front of it. And so I'm going to grab that, lock it, Command 2, grab this one again, copy, paste in front. And I'm going to step it up one more. And then I'm just putting this one in front of that other one. And so what it's doing is just giving me...
Oh, that kind of highlight shape instead of harsh.
Yeah, it just gives me just a little bit of that shadow, right? Except it's a little bit of a softer edge. And so if I take this one and I go Effect, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and preview, then I can kind of decide how soft or hard that edge is. So I'm just going to put a couple pixels on there. And then when I come off, you'll see that I now have a fairly similar situation what's going on there. So just a little harder edge. And all that is just, you know, one circle covering the other circle. The other circle is black, significantly lowered opacity and faded, blurred. And so you kind of get that edge. And then I'm seeing a little bit of a gold reflection here because this is going to change angles and it's facing this gold. So it's going to pick up that gold. And so we could come back into this one that we locked. And we can grab it. Let's make sure that that's it. That's the white one. So let's lock that. I should have named it. There's the black one. Okay, and so we go into our color, and we can just kind of mix a gold, or you can, you know, grab a dropper tool or something. I'm just going to come in and just kind of mix a little bit of a gold here, add some orange. I still want it to be fairly dark.
It took me forever to make a gold.
That's why I like HSB.
You get it in like 3 turns.
I like HSB for that. It's good. But see how it has that touch, and I'm seeing maybe, you know, a little bit more brown or whatever. So you can kind of mix that. You know, you kind of mix that a little bit more. I'm gonna add this and come up here, come down a little bit. Okay, and so now you have your. If we can come off of this, now you have kind of that action. Okay, and there's some interesting thing going on here as well, where it gets a little bit brighter in spots, lighter in other spots. And so you could come in within this face circle and do that circle with the highlight radial gradient.
Does it have to be a clipping mask to do that?
No, it can just be underneath. It can just be underneath this face. You know, but you could clip it if you want. Yeah, and so those are the two main things. And then your stitching is pretty small. So if you look at this, like from here to here is a single stitch.
I was even thinking about doing a pattern after working on patterns yesterday. I thought about doing a pattern on the leather because it's just too like sleek.
Right.
The gradient helps, but it's still.
Yeah. Yeah, but consider making bigger stitches, and kind of like we went over in class, where you add a gradient to the stroke itself, something like this, and then have it follow. And then you've got that. Kind of copy, paste, and back. Pull this over just a little bit on one side, and then change the whole thing to be like a super dark color. And that kind of gives it your shadow. And if you want to, you can grab this again, and you can go Effect, Gaussian Blur, Preview, pull that back just a little bit. Hit OK.
This blur thing is so good.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to be a little careful with it because it can get really overdone. But,
sure.
But yeah, and so that'll give you that, and then you can, and then just make sure that it's hard to see in your reference because your reference is pretty pixelated. But if you look right here, you'll see a shadow, right? And so this is pretty flat, and then there's a change in direction. And so if I were to like draw that, I would do like this. Okay, and then there's kind of like another one right here. Okay, and there's roughly another one right here as well. So we'll come over. And so if you can start like thinking like from a construction standpoint, the planes of this, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of see that this is going to be facing, this is probably lower if we're getting this right. This will be low. Like that. But in a 3D environment, this is going to be one value, this is going to be a different value, and this is going to be a third value. And depending on where your light source is, which in this case it looks like it's coming from the upper right-hand corner, this would be slightly brighter, this is a mid-tone, and this is darker. And then if we do this again and we go, grab this, well, I guess we'll do it this way. Right, so that goes back up, it's facing the light, right? And so if I take this up like this, we'll just make this really obvious. And so let's go with like that's facing the light, so we'll go light gray. And let me get rid of all these strokes. And so mid-tone, darker, lighter. You can see how that starts to show you like what the form is. It's harder to see in this leather, but you can see,
for sure,
a highlight here, and there's changes in the plane, in the direction that they're facing the light, and that'll help you kind of understand like where you should put stuff to help those shadows and those highlights come out.
So, do you think it needs a pattern? I mean, it just has that normal leather.
Yeah, I think you could put a little pattern on there. I don't think a little bit of a speckle would hurt.
Okay. Yeah. Not like poke it out.
But if they're small enough and spaced out, and if you do them kind of irregularly, that would definitely help. And then consider either an envelope distort or a gradient mesh on these. And your highlight here doesn't make any sense. It should be here, right? And so if I were to take this and go like this, and then let's add a gradient that has all 100% opacity. Okay, and then I'm going to just drag some of these over, get rid of this. Let's turn this to 90. Nope, sorry. Okay, and we'll get this off. Need that to be there. This is pretty dark there. And there's kind of a sharper thing, so I'm going to move this midpoint over to kind of sharpen that up. And then something along those lines, but then I want it to bend. So if you don't want to do a gradient mesh map, the other thing that you can do is go Object, Envelope Distort, Make with Warp. And then what you have is you have all these different options. And so I want it to go up slightly. And so I'm probably going to do an arc or an arch. And then you just adjust this to kind of where you want it to be. And this is only working because I had Object, Envelope Distort, Envelope Options, and I have Distort Pattern Fills. If I take Distort Appearance off, it kind of doesn't distort anything. But if I have Distort Linear Gradient Fills and Distort Pattern Fills, then it'll bend the gradients and the patterns. And so Object, Envelope Distort, Make with Warp, and then you can kind of just dial this in and out the way that you want it. Click OK, and then you just grab this shape, copy, paste in front, come all the way to the top. Kind of get that where you want it. And you can't do it with something that has a gradient on it, so let's get rid of our gradient. Grab that. Command 7, more than one object. Why won't it let me? What's going on with this? Let's look at it.
I unified it with other shapes, but it should just be one now.
Yeah, it should be. Let's smash it together just to make sure, but it should be just fine.
Oh. Do I still have
Is this not getting selected? Somehow it wasn't selecting the bend for some reason. So then that just kind of goes on top. And then you can come in and you can blend it down again. So we can go, if we're only interested in the highlight, or overlay, or multiply. Multiply isn't what we want. So probably overlay, dial this back just a touch. Maybe something goes on top of that or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just throw this. You can just throw this behind everything in front of that, which it's easier just to throw this back. And then you might do another one for, we can go inside of this clipping mask and we can go, I want it to fade off this way. And so, I'll put a, I think I understand what just happened. I'm just going on there. So that's the clipping mask. Should just have one object. Yeah, okay. So just right on top of that object. I'm just going to create a linear gradient. And I'm just going to go black to black. And there. And just switch it like this, flip it. Just drag that out. More. Okay, and then we'll go multiply and opacity down. Okay, just fringe those edges and you can get out of this. Another way that you can do it, which is super easy, is let's go back into this again. And let's create a shape like this. And let's make it white. And we'll get rid of our stroke. And we'll bring this up like that. And we can kind of just bend it. And we go back to Gaussian blur.
Mm-hmm.
Let's adjust that. Probably isn't very strong.
Yeah.
Then, do the same thing along those edges to give you kind of these different planes we were talking about.
That one seems pretty easy to me. Just
Yeah.
I need to play around with the gradient mesh map. Because I think that's great. I just don't know.
Yeah, it takes some getting used to.
But even doing something like that, just playing around with the shape.
Yeah, I want these seem to taper off to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd put a shadow along those so that those stitches look deeper.